What is up, everybody? Before we start the video, I need to give a little bit of a disclaimer. So my audio, as you can see throughout the video, cuts out several times. Unfortunately, it was an error on my end. I can only assume it was because I wasn't as close to the mic as I should have been, and that is my bad, and I apologize. But I hope you could still enjoy the video overall, and I hope you love Scott Pilgrim as much as we do. All right, editing, cut! What's up, everybody? Welcome to another DualShockers discussion. Today, we'll be talking about the world that is Scott Pilgrim. With me, I have the one, the only, Cameron Hawkins. How are you doing?
Doing good, Nick. How are you?
Thank you. So, we're going to delve through the history of Scott Pilgrim and kind of talk about our thoughts about the property as a whole. Of course, this is in celebration of the game releasing on Friday?
January 14th.
January 14th.
Which is Thursday. This Thursday.
Cam, what have been your points of the Scott Pilgrim universe? Have you just played the game? Have you just played the game and watched the movie then?
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, I wrote the review for DualShockers for Scott Pilgrim. It is my first time playing the game. And I was super looking forward to it. I had really high expectations just because of how many people that were just like, people were upset that it was gone simply because of like game preservation, but the majority of people were just like, no, this sucks because this game is actually really great. And so I definitely went in with a lot of high expectations that the game would uh, be that. And I think for the most part, it is. It's a legitimately like really, really good game. There are some things that haven't aged well, and some just general like game design flaws, or like not flaws per se, but just like questionable choices that they made. But in like overall, I think it's a really good game, and for like $15, it's definitely worth like that price tag in my opinion. It has a whole lot of replayability. If you're a fan of like Castle Crashers, very similar experience to Castle Crashers. If you're a fan of that, definitely check out Scott Pilgrim when it drops. And then I've watched the movie, Edgar Wright's movie. It's phenomenal. I love it. It holds up to this day because it came out the same year that the game originally came out in 2010. And Scott Pilgrim is a really great IP.
I absolutely adore it. Speaking of the movie, my favorite movie of all time. It just everything we were talking about before this. Everything just fits so well, and everything is just done so perfectly. And you couldn't pick a better director than Edgar Wright to cover this property, because I think something as somebody who read the graphic novel a couple of probably a couple of years ago now, or at least the first couple of books. The way that the intro is captured, almost scene for scene, like, and the style intact, is just so mind-blowing and so crazy that it was able to just see this on screen was to see the transition was really cool. Of course, the game originally came out in August 10th of 2010, just a mere 3 days before the movie came out. And I also want to touch on the animation, Scott Pilgrim versus the animation, which was an Adult Swim segments. They were like the commercial break segments that also aired just before. But yeah, and then of course we get into the movie that really made this franchise pop off. And again, we talked about it before, but there's just so many parts that are so classic. Like you can reiterate them. I think that of course it's the thing of that the people talk about of you're not supposed to identify with Scott. Like Scott is almost like a Joker character, where like you're supposed to see like that he is an asshole. Like
Yeah.
and that I think that was lost on a lot of people, especially around that time. But if I were to tell you that Scott Pilgrim didn't make money, would you believe me?
Like, it didn't sell well, like, the
It
movie-wise,
it
or
made it had a budget of 85 million and grossed 8, right?
that's that
That's something that I
sucks.
found out. That's something that I found out earlier. Uh and I was just blown away because I'm like I feel like for a pretty big, like even at the time he was still pretty big name director, and they had pretty big talent.
Mm.
I mean like big-ish. I mean like at
Like,
that
I
point.
love Edgar Wright, like,
Yeah,
I like, but I think at that point, like, I think Baby Driver was the first, like, the film that really,
that's
like,
true. That's true.
put his name out there, like, people will remember Edgar Wright, even though I think it's, like, my least favorite of his films, um, at least from, like, Shaun of the Dead to
Yeah.
now, but, yeah, I think the thing with Scott Pilgrim was just, like, at the time, no one really knew what Scott Pilgrim was unless read you
Yeah.
did read the books, but, like, a lot of people, they didn't really know what it was, and, like, it's like, "Oh, it's, like, leads by Michael Cera," like, it was just a very, like,
It was kind of an
obscure
odd
film.
piece.
It was very obscure at the time, like, I don't even remember if I saw it in theaters, like, I wanna say I did, but I'm not entirely certain.
I
Um,
also want to say, but I might have watched it on DVD.
yeah, but, like, when I watched it, I loved it. I've loved it ever since, like, every time I've watched it. Honestly, I haven't watched it. I should watch it more often, but because of how much I like it, but I just haven't. I watched it a few days ago, uh, wh while reviewing the game, and then I wanted to rewatch it again today. I was just like, "Oh, let's put it back on again."
Right?
It's fun. It's just, like, it's one of those movies where, like,
It's very
it's a very good, easy, like, background film, you know
oh
what I mean?
yeah.
Like, even though it's still a great film to just watch and consume, it's also a film, like, once you've watched it, it's a great, reliable, like, kinda like The Office, like, go to sleep
Yeah.
to movie, like, that type of thing.
It's definitely like one of those movies. I think it's also because it's my favorite movie. But it's just endlessly quotable. Like even
Oh,
outside of
yeah,
the
very
film,
quotable.
like he punched the
Very
highlights out
quotable.
of her hair, like
"Kick her in the balls!" Yeah.
um but yeah, so I have a few facts here that we can go over and go into for the movie slash a little bit as well as the comic book. Um but it took Edgar Wright 6 years before agreeing to direct. The eventual executive producers of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World first approached Wright to make the film in 2004 after a screening of Wright's film Shaun of the Dead by giving him a copy of the first volume of the author Brian Lee O'Malley's graphic novel. Wright would go on to make 2007's Hot Fuzz, great movie, before setting on adapting Scott Pilgrim, which was in 2010. So yeah, it took a second, which I get it. Seeing the Cornetto trilogy now, get it. You wanna finish your like vision for what you want your movies for delving into them. So I totally get that.
I
Um,
mean, it makes sense too. I mean, like, you said the graphic novel took 6 years to, like,
yeah,
write everything?
yeah.
So, like,
Well,
the
the
movie
graphic
came out.
I said the graphic novel wasn't even finished by the time of the film, so a
Yeah,
lot of that
exactly.
stuff
Like,
Brian Lee O'Malley.
Brian, Lee O'Malley probably told Edgar Wright, like, "Hey, this is how it's gonna end," that type of thing. So, because I know that, like, they helped make the game, so they're very much, like, good friends where they were working together to make sure that that movie was what it needed to be and all that jazz. So, but the thing I think that's great about it is that, like, even though, like, it does feel like, it does feel like Scott Pilgrim, and also it definitely does feel like Edgar Wright's version of it, not like
Right.
a direct comparison because, like, in the game, Ramona is, like, very cutesy and things like that, and in the movie, she is the
Yeah,
opposite of that. She is the
he is
exact opposite
cold.
of that.
He is absolutely
Y
cold.
yeah, so she like, it just and part of that might be just to, like, make her character more interesting, but also, like, from a film perspective, but also, like, hey, maybe it was just Edgar Wright wanting to, like, make some changes. So but it's still, like, overall, I think, did the story very well, so
Yeah, it's one of the rare exceptions, like doing a adapted both in the vision of the creator while also owns, and not only that, but doing it well. Um,
yeah.
there's another one which I knew before looking up the facts, but it's an interesting fact. Scott Pilgrim is a 1998 song by Canadian band Plumtree, which you can see Scott wearing a shirt of film. In the movie, Scott can be seen wearing one of the band's T-shirts, and the titular song appears in the sound. Fun fact: that's what Brian Lee
Did not
O'Malley
know
based
that.
the name off of. Um, the the all of the seven evil X's, including Scott, have a number tied to them, and it's all around. So Matthew Patel has one chevron and his military jacket. Lucas Lee has the Tibetan symbol for 2 tattooed on his neck, and wears a belt buckle made of 2 X's. Drives a car with the numeral 2, and also points at Scott with 2 fingers. Todd Ingram,
Okay.
yeah, Todd Ingram wears,
Okay. Yeah, he has the number 3. He has the
yeah, he
number
has the
3 on
number
his shirt.
3
Okay,
on
okay.
his
Yeah,
chest,
that okay,
and
here's the thing. That one, like, I feel like I didn't realize that was the connection, but still somehow knew it
in the
was the
back of your head.
connection.
But
Yeah, it was
did you also realize that there are 3 stripes on the side of his shirt too?
okay.
And then let's see, we got 2 stripes on the shoulders, and the trash cans in the alley where Scott fights him have all 3s on them. When Scott when Scott fights Roxy in the nightclub called Four,
Oh
and
my
Roxy
god, really?
also has 4 rips in her leggings. 4 rips in her leggings. Like, are you kidding? They went to all this work.
It's
The
needless attention to detail.
Right, the Katnianagi twins each have 5 and 6 stenciled on their cuffs, and turn up the volume to the Japanese character for 11, which is 5 plus 6,
Plus 6, yeah.
which is
Yep.
also a nod to Spinal Tap. Lastly, the logo for Gideon Graves' G-Man Records is made of 7s turned on to their sides. Scott, meanwhile, only drinks Coke Zero and has the Zero shirt because he's not. Oh, yeah. So that's just wild attention to. So in the part where Lucas Lee says big fan, and then, or no, I think it's Wallace who says big fan, and then
Mhm.
Lucas Lee says, why wouldn't you be? That actually happened, right, when he was backstage at the concert for the band The Hives, where he told the singer El Almquist he was a big fan. Almquist responded, why wouldn't you? This little. Oh, so the phone number that Ramona gives is actually a number that appears in many films, including Munich, Definitely Maybe, and The Adjustment Bureau. It's a real phone number that was acquired by Universal Studios to avoid a fake 555 area code normally used for phone numbers in. They actually bought the phone number, which is quite smart.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
like we
and
said,
they and the I mean, they bring it up in the film, but, like, the 7 X's,
7
the
evil
7
X's,
X's on the card, I'm just like, "Come on."
right? I think that's something that this movie does so well is the attention I think is so masterfully done. And as we said before, at the point where the work began on the film, only two of the books were written. So, and it shows because as somebody who read the first two, or I think it was two or three, I can't remember, but the books, they're pretty faithful. So only two
Wait,
books.
only 2 books were written when they
Yeah,
started filming?
yeah. I think there's like six.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And because of the only two books having written, some lines actually make it into some lines from the movie actually like
Huh, okay.
the title sequence idea didn't come out until late in production after it was suggested by Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So I was like, yeah, they kind of like it kind of has that grindhousey.
Yeah,
Um, Beck wrote all of the songs for Sex Bomb and
that's awesome.
is awesome. That sound talk about another soundtrack that absolutely rips. That soundtrack
Yep.
is mainstay on my Spotify. Um, those who could not already play instruments had to actually learn them. So everyone in that
Did
movie actually can play the instrument that they play.
so did Michael Cera know bass before the
Yes,
movie?
yes.
Oh, okay, that's
No,
cool.
do you know Michael Cera has a band?
No, I
Yeah,
did not
it's
know that.
actually pretty good. I
Was it
I forget the name of their,
Michael
but
Cera's band called
yeah, I know there is a band that's called Michael Cera Palin.
The Long Goodbye?
Yeah, like they're actually
Oh,
like,
Clark Duke is in it too.
yeah, it's actually
Wow.
not that bad. Like I'm like, oh okay.
Wow,
Uh,
okay.
Here's one that is for backers and so Edgar Wright wrote a letter to Nintendo for permission to use a song from Legend of Zelda, in which he called the game's music nursery rhymes for a generation. He wrote a letter to Nintendo to have Zelda's lullaby in the film. And obviously it
Dang.
worked. And I think that's another thing where when I watched it back in the day, like I was like, "Oh, like a film that's paying attention to what's actually happening outside of film and into video games." Like I'm like I feel like I was seen. Um
Yeah.
the original ending featured Gideon turning into a robot, but it was scrapped. We know from the
Oh, for the
game.
better.
Yeah.
For the better.
Yeah,
For the
yeah, I
better.
agree. I agree. From
Because I
the
mean, there were
game and the
because the twins control like robots and stuff too, and I'm like,
yeah, it's not
yeah,
good. It's not
no,
good.
what they did in the movie was definitely better.
Yeah.
And also, it's like one of my favorite parts of the movie is the band battle between the two
Yeah.
of them.
It's
Really
very
cool.
like almost JoJo's Bizarre Adventure where they have like bandstands, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, in the scene where Scott opens the door for Ramona and throws away the Amazon packages, took 30 takes for Michael Cera to throw the package over his shoulder straight into the bin. I should just
Well,
every
it's
time.
like the fucking cafeteria tray in Spider-Man. Like Toby
Yeah,
actually
actually
did
did
that,
that.
which is insane. But like the number of
It's so
takes that
weird.
it took for him to get it right was like, you know,
But those are the facts that I have for Scott Pilgrim. Would we like to spend the rest of the time gushing about this movie?
yeah, I mean like it's for those that are returning, it's the same Scott Pilgrim like that you know and love. It has all the DLC and stuff like that. There's 7 playable characters. Um You know, it's gonna be the same thing that you it's gonna be exactly what you want, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, when people weren't asking for, like, new stuff, they just wanted the old game back, and that's what you got. And it's good. Again, like, I think the thing with I think the th when I was first playing the game, when I first started, I legitimately was, like, kind of frustrated with it, and I was just like, the combat was just, like, felt just and I still think to a certain degree this is true, like, it felt very clunky, And it was because I didn't really like understand what the combat was going for. Because even though it's like it's like a side scrolling brawler, but like you can still move like up and down. So it's not like a traditional like fighter or anything like that. But like the moves that you're doing feels like you're inputting something in an actual like 2D fighting game, like you're playing Street Fighter or something. So like all your moves kind of feel like if someone blocks, then like you might get punished or like things like that. And that's how it feels like. It feels like you're playing an actual fighting game, like a traditional fighting game, but in a brawler, beat 'em up brawler, which is really, really cool. I haven't really like, I don't have a huge history with beat 'em up, like arcade beat 'em up games, but so I don't know if that's like a normal thing. But for me, it was really, really cool. And just seeing like, because when you level up, you don't gain stats. It's just more you gain a move, and it feels like the progression feels like a character at level 1 is just like missing the entirety of their kit, and as they level up, they get more of their kit, so that by the time you hit 16, which is like the max, even if you have like items, an accessory or something like that to up your strength, it doesn't you still feel stronger specifically because you have more abilities and like more moves that you can do, which I think is really, really cool.
I think it's a
But again,
good.
like, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I would say I think it's a good way to tackle that sort of combat as well. Because for somebody like me who's not, again, much like you were, I'm not well versed in the beat 'em up genre, and such. It's hard to get into because I feel like it's so overwhelming to learn things like the move. And I think it gives such a way to experience the moves and learn each move better by each level that you get. So like when I get a new move, I'm like, all right, let's test this out. Let's test this out. But when I start a game like say Streets of Rage 4, like I have all these moves and I'm like, I don't know what to do, so I just end up having like it's kind of like searching a move for a movie on Netflix. Like it's like I have this illusion of this so much choice, and it's hard to be like, all right, this will work good with this will work good with that. And I think like giving like piecemealing them out works a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. Like when you play like a fighter, you see all these abilities and you're just like overwhelmed. You don't, so you're just like, oh, let's get to button mashing, like for those casuals out there. And but in this sense, it's like, okay, no, I'm learning step by step so that hopefully when I do get to level 16, I know what everything does. I know what is the most optimal way to use these things. And to a certain extent, like it does work like that, but to a certain extent, because it is a beat 'em up brawler, and you are like you're not fighting just one person on screen all the time. You're fighting numerous people on screen, so it's kind of hard to like get into that mindset. There is still a little bit of button mashing, but like there are those you're gonna find those moves that you personally like that you like to use a lot. So, but yeah, it's a great system. It's a cool system, and I think, but my main issues though are like, and this is specifically in solo mode. Like we played a little bit of co-op, but like so I don't know, but we didn't play it all, so we don't know to the fullest extent what this case is. But like this game feels like it was meant to be played in co-op, not in just like how it was fun just to play with another person because we can just chat up and all that stuff. But it also just felt easier, and it not I don't even want to say easier, but I just want to say it felt balanced. Like, because I played through the game on solo, got through the first two, because there's only 7 levels. First 2 levels, pretty salt, like easy to get through. Died a few times, fine. But then when I got to level 3, I was just getting destroyed. I was getting absolutely destroyed, and then I didn't even like and I knew that there were shops, but I didn't really like know the basis of everything because the game kind of just puts you into everything. There is like a thing on like, oh, how to play in the menus, but you don't get that but before you play the game. You're just kind of jumped right into it. So for me, it took me a while to actually like look at the how to play and blah 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 blah, what everything meant. And you can go like depending on the level, there's a certain number of shops that you can go in through each level. And you can buy like either health, so like when your health goes to 0, you automatically gain like 25 health or whatever. But then there's also accessories, which is basically armor to an extent. Um, and but the thing that sucks about the shop is that it doesn't tell you what you're buying. It doesn't tell you like it tells you what you can see what you're buying, but you don't know what it does
Right.
until you buy it. So like for me, as someone who was new to the game, I was just like, no, I'm going to look up a guide
So you
and I'm gonna find
basically
out exactly what I'm buying because that's ridiculous. And um, but so like that's like the main thing that like that's at least in solo I can see be really frustrating because there's so much stuff there's so much replayability in this game because there's 7 characters that you can level up to 16. You can play through the game 7 times and it'll feel like a fresh experience because they all have their own unique abilities. But then like you have these difficulty spikes where even when you get like the best gear, you're still like kind of dying, you know what I mean? And you can still lose. And then so like, so for me, I was just like, okay, I need to get this item that ups my strength like an asinine amount. And then I was just like, the video store that's like the first store in the shopping district. Like if you go there, like hot tip, Scott owns a bunch of late fees, but once you pay off those late fees, they have the best shit in the game.
so good. Yeah.
It's like $5 for a life. So like basically whenever you die, new game, you go to the shopping district and then you buy what 6 lives, $30 worth of lives, and then you can get through anything okay. Like you know what I mean? So it's really either just like grind out your level and your like in your money to progress through the game because then you're set. Like you're not, like I doubt that you're going to get through you're going to get to the last level of the game and then you have 9 lives and you're gonna lose. Like I do not see that happening. But like there are those points where it's just like if you're not at this point, then you have to like kind of like go through the same level, hope that you get farther. But at the very least, if you die, you save up money. You know, so it's one of those things where like it's an unnecessary wall with a game that has like so much replayability. Like I don't know if they were just like worried when they developed this game back in 2010, 2009, but like that should definitely have not been in the game and they also should have should tell you what you're buying because that's another thing that can really slow you down. Like you save up all this money and then you buy it on things and then it's like things that you don't want. Like
Right.
it's why. So there are definitely those factors that like make the game longer than it needs to be, especially in general, and then especially because there's so much replayability in the story mode alone. But then you have the battle royale where you can like do versus online with people. You have the survival horror, which is just like horde mode. You fight a bunch of zombies until you die. Like there's so many things that you can do with this game, especially with having 7
I was gonna
characters.
say the
It's
characters
just like
definitely.
it's just like why? Why did you do this? But
But
outside of that, like
like
good game.
for me playing as Knives and Wallace for the first time was pretty cool just to see their different play styles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I didn't own them back in the day when I owned. I just had the base game, so it's that was cool for me. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot of new stuff. And then on top of that, like speaking of things that are kind of BS, is the like some of the enemies kind of suck. Like we were chatting
Yeah,
earlier about the the cameraman who
yeah.
just caught me in a loop and I lost a life like almost instantaneous. And it was right before the second boss. And I'm like, oh
It's a hard game. It's a
yeah.
legitimately like challenging game on at least on solo. Like again
Yeah.
on co-op,
Co-op
like
was absolutely
I
a breeze. Like this is my first experience with co-op in either the original game or the re-release, and it is such a breeze. where and it
Yeah,
might have been just been because we were going to the first level, but I mean, it was like we beat Matthew Patel super fast.
yeah, exactly. And because I saw like some people, because I remember again I was stuck on the third level, and I was just like, and I got to Todd, and I was just like, how do you beat this guy? Like how? And I looked up this team in co-op beat him in like 3 seconds, and I'm like, what?
Right.
How? But it's I don't know. It's great to see the progression, but again, there's just like those barriers of the game design that like feel like they're purposefully meant to slow you down, and it's just like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, it's definitely like I think it's definitely one of the greatest licensed games of all time. But
Yeah,
I don't think that is like it's so far up there. I don't think it's like with your golden eyes or all of that. I think it's like kind of the lower
no,
tier, but it's still such a great game and such a well developed game on a property that is very beloved. Just this property overall has been such a joy in my life since I saw the movie in 2010, and it continues to be such a fun property. But thank you, Cam, for talking with me, talking about Scott Pilgrim, something we both. And as always, you can keep it here to DualShockers for more great content. If you like the video, just hit that like button and possibly subscribe. Give us a little bit of give you some cool content. You just hit that subscribe button and we'll let you know. Anyways, catch you later, everybody.